Thanks for clicking on or listening to or watching, whether you're here live or watching the past broadcast of another episode of the Reforge Roundtable, a weekly podcast where we talk about all the latest and greatest gaming news. 30 and Still Gaming is still recovering with a voice issue, not feeling so hot, but he is feeling better. He's resting that voice. I am joined by Ginger Prime. Good to see you, sir.
Thanks, man, for having me back. Sorry about last week. We lost 30, and then last week I ended up in the ER with a tooth horrible accident thing, and it was like, all right, well, sorry, creature, sorry, Lono, I'm gonna have to dip out. So I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be feeling good, and I'm glad to be talking video games.
Well, we may do. I'm going to end the previous stream and bring people over from the Modern Warfare 2 gameplay stream. And we actually are going to talk about that a little bit. That is one of the topics in this video is Call of Duty, the big showcase, Modern Warfare 2, Warzone 2. I actually had a great time in the beta once I switched to a particular mode, and we'll talk about what that mode was. We're also going to be talking about God of War Ragnarok finally really dropping the big one this week and kind of pulling out all the stops as it seems. And New World is hitting good numbers according to Brian. You know, I've not been paying attention to it. I did a reaction video to his video, and it was the reaction from the community was that I was just trying to grab relevancy from New World now that it's important again. I was like, oh really? I don't think they realized I covered and played the game for like a month and a half.
That critique is gonna fly out everywhere against content creators as they start to take a look back. And my counter argument to anybody who has that view is legitimately like, you want people covering it, and you don't have to cover it in like, we don't want just like all positive, like this game is great, you should absolutely play it now coverage. We want to make sure we have a lot of voices, and more people talking about it is always good. Even if they're bashing it, it's always good. But no, your reaction was phenomenal. I enjoyed it. I watched every second of it, and I enjoy people reacting to my content. We've not even as a topic, maybe we'll save it for like the members post show, but reaction content and its meta and the positive and negative impacts, because at the end of the day, the numbers show reaction content is great. Being reacted to isn't good for the original creator. And so we can talk about that later if you want in the after show, but lots to talk about, dude. And I'm definitely the New World Friday guys right now, because I'm tickled because there's so many good things going on in the game.
Well, and you also have stuff about Square Enix. We'll talk about that for a little bit. I've even got some thoughts on Forspoken, because we got to see some trailers with Japanese voice acting, and I've got some thoughts on how I'm going to play that game. But let's start with the big boy in the room, God of War Ragnarok. Yeah. So there was a narrative swirling. You had the original creator of God of War, David Jaffe, calling the game DLC. Then you had people saying it looked like DLC. And then during a State of Play this week, it was on September the 13th, they said they were going to have just some stuff with Japanese developers and some hardware, and then they dropped two pretty significant things: more information on the exclusive quest for Hogwarts Legacy, and they also dropped the story trailer for God of War Ragnarok. And this is probably one of the best trailers I think I've ever watched myself, from the voice acting, pacing, scripts, the original score, holy moly. And I basically said, this is it. This is the end of the matter. No one can claim this looks like DLC. No one can claim this doesn't look like a sequel. And I still got pushback from people. Funny enough, they said there wasn't enough gameplay in the trailer. And I'm just curious what you think. Like, if you watch the trailer and have seen the feedback on this game in particular, what are your thoughts on this as a subject, as almost like a phenomenon now? Is like we're going to be critical to something from a couple of trailers.
I think that there is this easy incentive of this negative feedback loop in terms of Ragnarok. You have, outside of the Sony ponies and the Xbots, warring it out for internet points or what have you. This game is the only thing that it is already the pinnacle. It's already the game that people are moving out of the season so that they are not stacked up against, because no matter what, you're going to be compared against it. Hope there will be a few sacrificial lambs that will be out there, and you want to have that, because not God of War Ragnarok isn't going to appeal to every gamer out there. But at its core, like the argument of labeling this as DLC, the argument of putting these things out there, there's a, like, if we want to look at the positive side of things, is that if we want to deflate any kind of hype around this game and call it just straight up garbage right at the start, and then it comes out, well then awesome. Like, it's better than I was expecting. I thought this was going to be a DLC, but it ended up not being that. So there's a positive way in that regards, but I always kind of just get suspect whenever, especially in the content creation space, the post, like the posting on Twitter space, like it seems very attention hungry, really trying to get those internet points for cloud, of like just trying to dog on something for the sake of dogging on it. And there's going to be obviously various angles of why people would do that. Like, obviously, I think Xbox fans are upset about, their games kind of moving out of this fall. But at the end of the day, you're going to play, God of War Ragnarok, and then you're going to finish God of War Ragnarok. And if the other games are then ready, maybe overall, as gaming goes, we might have a more smoothed out 2023, as opposed to the rush of like, we're going to put all the games in February, and then we'll see you guys in November for God of War. Like that aspect. So I think it's childish to call this DLC. I think that's my a view of whenever I see like internet tribes going at it in a real way. Not like, if you just want to meme on something, we like to meme on Final Fantasy 14. Chris and I were having a field day today when his friends like to kind of ask him funny little ways that dig at 14 because they're like a certain gamer of a certain type. And that's always funny because that person's teasing. But in the internet, like whenever you're like, my worldview depends on this, then I just go, well, maybe you need to go touch grass.
Well, it's funny because I touched on this. I reacted to a Starfield video by Force Gaming, and I touched on this in the reaction video. Yeah. I said, it depends on the day of the week and what I'm defending or criticizing what I would hear from the audience. Because there were days where I was defending Starfield, and I said, I think some of this stuff looks very good. I thought the characters looked very much improved from the previous game. And I was told that, oh, you're just a fanboy defending Starfield. And then, change the day, I was being critical or concerned about some of the performance issues I saw in the trailer, and I was told that I was being a hater. And it's just kind of like, it depends on the day of the week and what game you're covering and what angle you're covering it from, what you might hear. And Ragnarok definitely feels that way, because I even did a video where I was annoyed with Ragnarok. I felt like the marketing was just starting to get annoying. It's like, can you please just say something, show something, do something? And I was even annoyed that they kept it super secret that they were going to be at that state of play, because the way they promoted the state of play was like, you guys probably didn't have that much viewership for the state of play, but they probably counted on the wow factor of it suddenly showing up, making big press headlines. And in that coverage where I said I was a little bit of annoyed or whatever, I had people who weren't even watching the video leaving me like nasty comments defending God of War, because I think they just assumed from the thumbnail I was going to be negative. And I was like, I'm not being negative. I was asking the question, should we start to restructure our expectations around the marketing of video games now? Are we expecting way too much too soon? Because that has not gone that well for a lot of titles, and it seems like some titles are moving away from that.
I feel like it's worked against a lot of titles. That's why when Apex Legends launched, I would love to see this as the model. Make the game, have the game ready to go, and then, hey, guess what? We're going to market it, and by the way, you can play today, or you can play next week, to where all of a sudden you don't have the ability to start having this, kind of anti-hate, crowd build itself up and have any kind of presence in the algorithm itself. But listen, like what you just described is how I describe the internet. On the same day, I was called both a homosexual and a homophobe. And I was like, well, clearly the internet can't make up its mind about anything in that regards. So you getting prejudged for that, like that's, I think, what the internet in and of itself does. It's all about those hot moments. What is going to get me the attention, like that. And just trying to either get a reaction out of the creator or just trying to get some kind of engagement maybe in the comments itself. So in and of itself, like I'm excited. I've never played a God of War game, but I'm still rooting that God of War crushes it this fall. Like I want it to be good. There's hundreds of people who've poured blood, sweat, and tears. And if Sony, one of the things I respect a lot about Sony is I always feel like they give the games the time that they need. And that means sometimes things are going to have a longer development cycle, but I think that it pays off because it automatically, I feel like God of War Ragnarok is going to come out and it's going to be a quality game worthwhile of me going out and buying a PlayStation and buying it. I'm not, because I don't have that kind of finances or that luck in finding a PS5, but this also still coming to PS4. So for those out there, I'm personally be like, bring the PC and let's talk. And that's more controversial right now, more than anything, you know.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people. I've gotten some comments. I had a short where I talked about the trailer, and I had a lot of comments that said, I'm so bummed as a PC player, I can't believe I have to wait to play this. And I thought, that's Sony's strategy working. The fact that you got to play the 2018 game, you played a 4-year-old game, and now you're dying to get the sequel. You know, these people might be starting to check out those PS5s and try to snag one. And the trailer started a conversation in my brain, and a similar conversation started when Elden Ring started its big promotion cycle. And I remember watching the trailers and the gameplay for Elden Ring, and I said, "Oh boy, that's game of the year right there." That's you do the same thing with movies. You're like, "Ooh, that's going to go for the best movie, best actor." And this story trailer did something similar. I thought, "Oh boy, those scales might be tipping. This thing is going to make a run for game of the year." How much do you think that is affecting the conversation now, given that I think Elden Ring had it in the bag in many people's minds, but God of War is climbing up out of the water, and it looks to be a Leviathan title. Not that I thought it wasn't going to be good, but it's looking far bigger in scope and story than many people were probably thinking.
Talk about two fandoms clashing for internet drama shenanigans. At the end of the day, like, freaking Elden Ring is, I think, a masterpiece, and if God of War Ragnarok delivers and then some on what it's building off of, then I think essentially, you've got two titans going head to head. And in my mind, there aren't any losers there. Like, gamers got really good games this year. Now, as for who is to claim the title, oh man, it's not going to be pretty for whomever has to make that announcement, because then there's automatically people are going to be frustrated one way or the other. Because, Elden Ring isn't without its controversy. You had the whole kick up of, gamers feeling like that games should be accessible to everybody and that there shouldn't be difficulty in games. And that's a conversation that comes up every time there's a game that is difficult. But also, like, I think it was in chat, it was Corey talking about how there seems to be this trend in which that gamers are actually just this hateful towards game, this rise of the angry gamer, so to speak, and how that in and of itself is this awful trend as well. So you got a couple different moving forces. Having not played God of War, probably not going to pick up obviously Ragnarok, because I don't think this would be the one I would start with personally. I'd probably pick up the original on Steam if I was going to sit down and play through one. But at the end of the day, like, I mean, I couldn't weigh in because I'm not going to have experience, and the game isn't even out yet. What do you think?
You need to play it. You need to play 2018. I think there are certain games that people should play. It's too good. The story, the voice acting, the original score, it's too excellent to not play. The character that the guy that portrays and voice acts Baldur, he plays the translator in Saving Private Ryan, and he also plays Daniel Faraday in Lost. He is absolutely phenomenal, what he brings to that character. And I think we're getting similar levels of voice acting quality in this next one just from the trailer alone. Tyr and who we think is Odin, just unbelievable. And just the dialogue between the characters and the lore that you get when playing through God of War 2018 is worth it. I don't do this. My chat will tell you. I don't like to listen to dialogue and diatribes and do a lot of reading. But in God of War, it is one of the titles where I will stop and I will listen and let them finish. And the great thing that they do is Atreus and Kratos will be having a conversation about something, and then eventually they add another character to the ensemble who's also giving great lore. You'll get back in the boat, and they'll say, so anyway, they'll pick it up where they left off. So it's not one of those games where you awkwardly accidentally skip something because you dock the boat and you're like, oh no, I thought they were going to keep talking. I really appreciated the care they took with that. It's like, it's just dialogue as you're moving, traveling, and doing stuff, and the way they pick it back up is just excellent. So I would say if you can play it on a really good PC, or maybe once you get your hands on a PS5, you definitely want to play 2018 before you play Ragnarok, because it is one of the better games to experience the top shelf Sony first person title, encyclopedia of games that are out there.
Good to know. Good to know. If it runs on Steam Deck, I'm playing through Spider-Man right now on my Steam Deck, and absolutely adoring it. Like, it is such a, like, Insomniac, I tell you, they have, and building off of obviously like Infamous, absolutely just like adored that game, and so I'm really having a good time with that. So that definitely is like something that at the end of the day, I don't think that's the game I stream. I think that's just one of those like kick back, relax, handheld, and go have fun with it, because that definitely gives it. So I'll have to look it up after this to see, once I finish with Spider-Man, if it's Steam Deck ready, then I think that's definitely an easy win.
Yeah, and as far as showcases go, we still haven't even seen the PlayStation Showcase, so that is likely sometime this month. I think they're waiting for Tokyo Game Show to finish with that. What that'll conclude on Sunday, and then I'm assuming they're going to announce the PlayStation Showcase, and I'm hoping we get a really, really good breakdown of gameplay improvements and different things like they did with Horizon Forbidden West, because now that The Last of Us Remake is out, the runway's open. It's Ragnarok's time. It's time for all sources and resources to be dedicated to promoting this game. So there is more coming that we will likely cover on this show, as well as on just the Reforge Gaming Talk show. And within the realm of big showcases, Call of Duty did not spare a single dime yesterday with their big showcase that they did, not announcing, but showing a whole lot more of Modern Warfare 2, Warzone 2.0, Call of Duty Warzone Mobile. It was unbelievable. And I was irritated, obviously, as a live entertainer with the pacing. Now, there could have been technical problems. They kept saying, oh, gameplay is coming up. They murdered all momentum. Like, we were all waiting, and then they went live with a 30-minute timer. That's strike number one. I was like, what on earth? And then as we build more momentum as the timer comes down, it kicks off with a bang. The trailer's amazing, but then the trailer has a technical issue, and we get a black screen, so they run the trailer twice.
Oh, no.
And the trailer was phenomenal, by the way. As somebody who listened to Nirvana and Foo Fighters and the Smashing Pumpkins in the 90s, hearing Bullet with Butterfly Wings in a trailer was such a throwback to my teenage years and the years.
How many claims on your stream, though?
Funny enough, that didn't get claimed, I guess, because it's a mashup. It's like a new version that more than likely is hopefully whitelisted, so we didn't get a claim there. Our Tokyo stream got a bunch of claims, but we're muting those. And so they kept saying after that point, we're going to get the gameplay, and eventually I think people just got annoyed and left. Like, we literally lost viewers while waiting for gameplay, which I've never experienced that in a live environment. Usually there's just a momentum of upward trajectory. I've been doing this for 10 years, and I thought they lost the audience because I'm losing people hand over fist, and we're just sitting here patiently waiting. I think there might have been technical problems. In any case, they really have stepped up their game with this iteration. I played the beta today, and obviously the dilemma with Call of Duty, any established franchise, I always jump in. This happened with Vanguard. I jump in, I'm getting smoked. It's like, it's my first game. What is going on? And my second game went a little bit better. And then I realized there were other game modes. So I jumped into Prisoner Rescue. This game makes me want to play Call of Duty, which is totally weird. It's totally weird to say this because I'm not a COD guy. Like, I burned myself out on Call of Duty. But it's round-based. You're either rescuing or defending a hostage. You got different things you can do. I was like throwing cameras on the wall and monitoring, where the enemy locations were. Obviously, you have different left, right, and center routes to take to try to get to the hostages or to defend them. And it was just really, really satisfying gameplay. And the gunplay felt tight and responsive. I never once felt like, man, the guns feel loose or maybe there's too much recoil. And the only thing, a couple of times maybe felt a little bit laggy and felt like, oh man, I shot first, the classic Call of Duty feeling of I shot first. But once I got in a groove with Prisoner Rescue, the only frustration was if you have a couple of bad rounds, you kind of get cold. You haven't been shooting, you haven't been doing anything for a while. So is with all the announcements, with the improvements to Modern Warfare 2, with Warzone 2.0, and they're saying raids are coming to Modern Warfare 2, they're going to be like Destiny. Where do you land on the interest spectrum here? Because this is definitely a game that everybody's played at least once.
So Modern Warfare 2, when it originally came out, this was the exit point for Call of Duty for me originally. Not that actually I disliked Modern Warfare 2. I liked it immensely. This was a game that I played a lot of back in the day, but ended up happening after that. I felt like the series started to go downhill. This is right after Infinity Ward, the whole split, and then that created a Respawn over it with EA. Like, that's essentially what happened right after this game. And so Modern Warfare 2, in my mind, is still one of the most pinnacle defining versions of the game itself. And so everything you've obviously just detailed, here's the question that I am evaluating, because with the acquisition pending with Microsoft, like, obviously this year is going to be for sale. It's still with Activision Blizzard. You still have all of these things. It feels like every time that I've kind of jumped back into Call of Duty, I've always financially regretted it. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's always like, wow, like how is like, and I find myself asking like dumb questions, like, why is a $1 billion franchise still have matchmaking and getting into a group and crashing on this console? Why is this still a thing? Like, how did this get all the way to this point? And I think a lot of that's been within the development cycle. But Modern Warfare 2 and the Warzone 2 coming out as well does intrigue me as a fallen away fan and as a disgruntled fan of Call of Duty as we start to look towards its future here, and ultimately what ends up happening, with it. Having not gone hands-on with it, I'm kind of for Modern Warfare 2, for any Call of Duty, anything that has that branding that is not immediately in Game Pass, they kind of have to earn my trust back. And that's gonna be like, I'll give it a week. I'll give it, maybe 2 weeks. And if then the positive vibes are still there, people aren't saying like, oh my gosh, like it's the net code's broken and there's launch issues, like, then essentially I think that's gonna be worth then checking out. For me personally, I don't see everybody's got to follow my lead. It's just that I've been there for a couple of ones and it's like, what's gone wrong? Like, why is this not, meshing up to what I want it to be? And then all of that being said is that, if it was in Game Pass, it'd be an instant play. But I'm going to kind of wait and see, let the thing let all the tree, shake all the nuts out and see where everything falls. Because we've even seen in the past where they've delayed certain kind of monetization strategies and things like that, only to then release them after all the reviews themselves are out, like a couple of weeks after the fact. So when it comes to Call of Duty, like, I still see that Activision overlord. And despite this being my favorite Call of Duty in the history of my time with the franchise, I'm gonna have to play the skeptic in terms of, all right, that looks great. You're great at marketing. We all know you're great at marketing, except for obviously all the technical issues with the stream.
Right.
But but I will absolutely give it another crack, assuming that, like, after it's been out, or what's the vibe, and then the idea that they're either bringing in the concept of raids. Some of these things I think will be really interesting to see, because we could bring this right back to Halo. What the hell is Halo doing this fall? It delayed its season. Like, the season 3 kicks off, in the spring. So if I'm not playing around with the Forge beta, then yeah, maybe I need a new shooter this fall to kind of take some sting off of it. But I ain't gonna be a day oneer with this version.
I mean, I'm gonna be a day oneer, because I have such a history with the franchise. I love shooters, and obviously as a content creator, certain times, like, you don't have a choice, right?
You be relevant or be forgotten,
Yeah, because I was like, should we risk trying to play the beta? And my creature was like, what do you mean? Yes, play it. Try play it. It's like, the servers will be fine. It's Call of Duty, which, to their credit, yeah, I had no issue. I got in right away. I think I had one little blip where I had to go back into the game one time. I was in the lobby and it kicked me back, and so it wasn't even I was in a game. And I'll be day one for a couple of reasons. Number one, I have always loved a good Call of Duty campaign, because there is something. It's like mom's home cooking to a certain degree, just playing through a Call of Duty campaign is so familiar. It's so, to me, the cutting ground of where I first got into shooters, outside of obviously when I played GoldenEye and then Time Splitters. That would be the only shooters.
Oh, Time Splitters, dude.
Yeah.
Time Splitters 2.
Yeah, Time Splitters and Time Splitters 2 and Wolfenstein 3D. Those would be the only shooters I played before Call of Duty, because I played Call of Duty and Quake 3 and Unreal Tournament kind of all around the same time. And so there's just something fun about playing through a Call of Duty campaign. And then when I play through multiplayer and I feel like, oh, hey, they put some stuff in here that I can enjoy. Because the minute you're in the quick twitch, need to check every corner, meat grinder of team deathmatch, I just don't. It's so hard to enjoy that because you're literally either losing or winning, and so there's no joy. And the reason I was enjoying Prisoner Rescue was because even when I was down and out, I could watch my teammates and cheer for them, and had some really exciting moments watching my teammates clutch up or yelling at my teammates for playing like morons, whichever. That emotional investment is there, but it creates a more dynamic experience, and I love that they did that. Like, they brought a game mode where I can be a little bit more engaged. Now, I have questions about why they went with this. I don't know if you've seen this. When you're dead and spectating your teammates, it's like a camera on the side of their head, kind of like the tactical cameras you see, like when the government's watching a Black Op or something. And it feels like you're drunk because it's kind of fisheye, and you can't see what the guy's doing. You just see his gun. You don't see if he's aiming down sight or anything. So I'd like to be able to toggle off of that and see what they're actually doing. But other than that, I didn't have any gripes other than, I got thrown into a sweat lobby my first match. Like, that's never fun. It's like, well, I got 4 kills. I died the whole time, And once I got into Prisoner Rescue, I had a lot more fun. And then the news that they're going to have Destiny-style raids, I'm saying to myself, wait a minute. That doesn't appeal to your average COD head. That appeals to me as a guy who played Borderlands and had played Destiny and had played all these games. That appeals to me, which is interesting because I'm very curious about how it's designed, how difficult it will be. Does that at all move the needle for you?
Yes, absolutely. Well, absolutely. It's one of the things that I don't know if you and I were talking about this, but I was saying it before Infinite launched, Halo Infinite. I was like, what is it going to do that's going to pull me away from Destiny? The unique hook of Destiny is that you're really investing in your character, right? And also, if you don't feel like going into PvP, you have PvE style content. And there's nothing more frustrating than, especially when you want to keep playing a game and maybe it's a little late and you're tired and you're like, okay, I'm clearly not performing at my best in PvP. Man, how nice would it be to continue to play this game, but I could go shoot some bad guys. I could just go do this. And the campaign being disconnected from any progress of multiplayer. So the idea that they could bring in raids, that to me, it invites the idea that you have a character that you are progressing and you're leveling, and who knows if it's a separate mode, because we've seen them do obviously kind of and I'm drawing a blank on the name for the term, but where you have the various different kind of monsters and waves that you're they're kind of horde mode and in the fantasy worlds and stuff like that. That always was a really cool piece of content that I enjoyed actually in COD, but I could never get my friends to go play it. But if there's a unified progression that kind of ties into whether you're doing PvP or PvE, then that's really exciting. And the idea of raids themselves sounds exciting. It sounds like it's the evolution of kind of what they're working towards. And then they all of a sudden, man, you put Call of Duty right back, on the map, and it offers something that maybe at the end of the day, if people don't like it, then I don't think you see it happen after that. But if it becomes a success, you end up seeing why aren't other shooters offering raids and et cetera as well. I would love to see dungeons brought into Halo Infinite. I'm not gonna lie, I think if they brought in 4-man strike team, PvE, you're working your way through and you got bosses and stuff like that, sometimes I think that'd be more fun to play that than doing the PvP. But again, content is king.
Maybe people will create some in Forge because they're clearly the community is creating better content than 343 is with Forge. The official, I don't know if this is the official description, but this is a description that was put in the Discord about the raids. Raids are a whole new experience for the franchise, a 3-player cooperative engagement requiring teamwork and strategic puzzle solving, thinking in between bouts of intense combat. So it does sound like it's going to get pretty intense, pretty, hunker down and survive. But also, you're going to have to be strategic and solve puzzles to get through it. I actually like that it's a more of a stripped down 3-man squad thing. That to me sounds very promising, because I do feel like in Call of Duty, if it got into like 6 people, it might just sort of feel like, what are we playing here? But I think with 3 people, it'll definitely feel more strategic and more planned out. And because I don't honestly know what they're gonna do. What are we gonna be fighting? But it makes me think of almost like Division and Destiny might spit out something here, like a great hybrid between the 2 franchises.
I think that's something that I've been longing for. That's one of the things I think you and I have talked about at length in terms of like the disappointment that Anthem is no more, namely to have some other option in the space to keep Destiny and Bungie in check. Because right now it feels like they are the show. Call of Duty would be a franchise that, like the Division, while the Division continues to have kind of its chaptered stuff happen more frequently, they are working on Division Homeland. Then all of a sudden, imagine if Call of Duty wanted to step into the space, and this could be a good foray and good test of that. Is there demand? Imagine that. I think that would be a very beautiful mindset if they decided to create a looter shooter-esque, kind of games as a service mode. They already have that in Warzone, so that they're getting some experience there, and to be able to offer that as a content product, as opposed to like saying every Call of Duty from here on out is this. You could literally say, okay, cool, we're gonna franchise this piece of it. And that's how we've seen some of the best games and game modes actually evolve. They've usually evolved off of, hey, we actually found this little bit of fun and we decided to refine it. And I think Call of Duty would be a really good competitor to the likes of Destiny. But the question then is like, what age do you set it in? And my personal vote would be sometime in the future, because then you could end up having a lot more options. Because like the one struggle I've had with Division is that feels like it's so much more grounded into reality, aka Call of Duty, that you're like, why is this guy like, I took 3,000 bullets? Like that line gets fractured really quickly when you start doing that. But if they did like a futuristic Call of Duty, then all of a sudden, you're on an alien world, or who knows, like what they would do that would kind of file into it. But in the case of Modern Warfare 2 and its raids, it'd be interesting to see, because imagine going through waves of enemies in terms of like, you got a big bad and he's locked up in his fortress and you got to go do this to stop a nuclear bomb. That would feel very, very natural to that, as long as the enemies weren't like, and now you have to pour 2,000 bullets into this one guy. Because at some point you're just going to be like, well, that's kind of silly. I'm like, you've lost me here on that, but yeah.
Yeah, it's got to live inside the Modern Warfare 2 identity and world they've built. And, Sven put in the Discord, imagine if you have to use specific loadouts and attachments to effectively do the encounters. And the thing I was thinking of when he was typing that is, if they did an ongoing game and they did what some of these games are doing with random encounters, and maybe you have all these different set pieces that are randomly put together every time you go in, and you have different waves of enemies, different encounters, different things you have to do. And what I was doing in the Prisoner Rescue in Modern Warfare 2's open beta, I was going to the same spot every time and throwing a camera on the wall and like marking people, and my teammates just picked it up. They'd go to the lane and they'd be like shooting down the lane, and I was getting like experience points for them landing shots on the guys I was marking. And there was a couple of guys I couldn't mark because they were running a perk set, I'm sure. And I can just imagine playing through almost like a rogue. It would feel a little bit like a roguelite mode, where you're going through this randomly generated encounters and getting all this stuff. You could then level up your character and level up loot and level up your camera and abilities and all these different things. And if you're working in tandem with other players who are then also using their abilities, they reworked the guns and the gunplay in this. I do think Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, I think it's going to be hailed as the tightest, best feeling shooter. I think it's going to take the crown. It's hard to take the crown from Destiny, because there's a secret sauce in the Tiger engine, and then you've got Respawn with Apex. But after playing this, I feel like a lot of people are going to start claiming, no, this is the best shooter. This just feels like a tight next-gen military shooter where no matter what gun you're using, there's a crunchy tightness to it, and it feels punchy. The sound, oh my gosh. I'm wearing these Bose headphones, and I'm kind of getting into it. And there were sections where the metal stairs, I was on an escalator, and it was louder and echoey in the corridor. And I was trying to be quiet, and it was like ding, 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 ding. I was like kind of like echoing. I was like, oh, come on, be quiet, like I'm trying to sneak. And then I came upstairs, and it was wood, different. And then there was like glass crunching and breaking.
Yeah.
Even though I was like kind of annoyed, I was like, I keep dying. I was still picking up on. They've really polished some of these pieces that would make a PvE environment like a raid or some sort of a randomly generated PvE encounter. It would just be so fun to be in that world and have all those great pieces of polish right there in front of you.
Absolutely. I'm rooting for it. I'm just going to wait and see. I'll hang out on your streams and wait to make sure that like there isn't a boogeyman that's hiding behind the natural hype and quality that this game was back when I originally poured so much time into it with me and my friends back in the day. Absolutely always going to root for it. I'm really excited by everything that has been revealed. But then again, I'm just going to say like, yeah, I made myself a promise with the last Call of Duty that I played that I was like, all right, I'm going to let this one sit out there for at least a week or two before I decided if it's worthwhile re-jumping back in and playing it. So that's going to be great because thank you for jumping on and jumping in because then I can kind of hang out in the streams and, and basically get tempted every time I lurk on your streams.
Yeah. Well, the Warzone 2 and the Call of Duty Warzone mobile stuff, that's not really a world that either of us live in. So that to me is like, hey, great for Warzone. Awesome. Maybe we'll do a Plunder community game night or something, but I don't really touch that. I definitely won't be touching the mobile game. I'm sure it'll print money. Which is exactly why, PlayStation is nervous about it. And, that we'll continue to cover that as well, the PlayStation Xbox dispute about that, because the UK CMA is going into a second stage of them looking into it. So what I want to do now, though, is not talk about a game that is that's coming out or that there's betas for. I want to talk about a game that has been out for a while, and many of us have drifted away. And you're telling me that they're hitting new player records on Steam charts. I'm looking at 32,000 people playing right now. Mm-hmm. And just as a point of comparison, in July, their biggest number was 21,000. So they have spiked up. That was a peak, by the way. That was a peak at 21,000. Right. They were usually in the teens, like 16,000. So they've pretty much doubled the concurrent player pool, and that doubling started around September the 4th. So now, 12 days running, what are they doing over there? Where'd all these people come from?
So a couple of things have been actually happening. So right now the peak is set at 40, was set this last weekend. The previous peak was set at 36. And so the question was, did the announcement just bring people back in to New World for the hype? Oh, hey, news, they're Brimstone. Okay, I'm excited. I'll check it back out, and then I'll either wait. Well, what we ended up seeing was interesting, too, because when those announcements happened, the game was also 50% off. There was also a Twitch drop, campaign running as well. So generally speaking, there was like all these little marketing things that would be, positive for the game. Well, Did
I not say the name of the game?
You didn't. That's why I said New World.
New World. Sorry, I'm an idiot. I was setting that up with a segue and didn't actually say the name of the game. Sorry, continue.
You're good. So all of those things actually turned off, and then the game actually had the highest peak concurrent over the course of the weekend. We've seen them spin up new servers, which can prove to be problematic. I think the key feature they need regarding their server infrastructure is cross-server play. To help mitigate risk of a server, quote unquote, dying and needing to be turned off, because back in July, they merged a lot of worlds, which I think was the right call. But here they are actually spinning up new worlds in every region. Currently, the only region that has not got a new world is the US West region. Everybody else seems to have been getting new worlds. EU has gotten 3, I think 2 or 3 new worlds already, brand new. But you can transfer on them. And so the devs are also hinting at that they're going to consider what's called a fresh start server. This will be something I'm really interested in your opinion on, where you cannot transfer in to the world. Like literally it would be just brand new land rush like it was at launch, day. We don't have details on it, so we don't yet know, but they've signaled that fresh start servers might be on the way. And my concern as a longtime player of this game is that if you bring in fresh start servers, you're going to bring in that's in my mind, that's a seasonal server. How long do you prevent people from transferring? How do you keep that population healthy if it is just that land rush? And that's why I hope that we see news and hear news about crossplay. They said they were working on it back in January. We have not gotten updates on it since then, but we are seeing signaling in game code that is. I don't think it's going to be October, but I hope to be wrong. But that's essentially what's happening. I think essentially you have obviously a hype cycle for the game. They just opened the PTR so you can explore the new zone on the PTR, and it's magnificent. It literally shows both the capabilities and the confidence that the devs are getting in the game itself. They're also not just adding on to the new. One of my biggest critiques of 14 is that they add all the new good stuff always at the current expansion on top, and then the rest of the game kind of really semi remains the same. They have gone back slightly and done some things like that, but they're also not just adding in the new zone. They're going through and retooling two of the main zones as well, with plans to basically, it sounds like, touch every zone and really kind of bring up its quality and its identity within the zone itself. So I don't know if we're going to see even better records this weekend, or if we're going to see a slow dip into it, because we still have a while to go towards October, and we're still waiting for whatever this big news is. I personally could see that it kind of stabilizing a little bit in its player population, but I'd love to be wrong. And the other thing I haven't told you that I'd love to get your thoughts on is that they've actually slid each weekend. They've increased the overall player population that can run on a single server. So when it launched, it was at 2,000. Previous weekend was at 2,200. This last weekend, they increased it to 2,500. And I'm wondering if that's also a signaling of them testing out like the server architecture in terms of how many people they can put into the world. And with the new zone, it actually is going to be nice to have even more people on a server, because the landmass is just exploding in terms of its size. So that's really what's going on. I think we have yet to see the biggest peak yet. And so now the community ultimately is speculating, do we see it jump to 80, with the launch of October's Brimstone? Do we see it go even higher? Personally speaking, I think that they've raised the floor in terms of as we look at what the lower numbers were. I think that sets our floor. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that would be concerning for me in the long run is that if we see the game drop below that floor with all the improvements and the contents and the promise of a future. So I think we're setting a new floor. We just don't know what that floor is yet. So there's all kind of moving parts. I'm really thrilled. I couldn't recommend enough, but I've asked you, put a lot of detail into your brain. What's your take on servers, on the server cap, on the fresh start servers? I'd love to actually hear all your thoughts on it.
Well, I want to start with fresh start servers because I literally said they should do that. That's like a verbatim thing that we said. Man, that early game, that new car smell, that early land rush is so fun. It'd be great if you could just go into a server and know that everybody's doing that. And I also said that I think that idea, the full iteration of it, the full version, its final form, would be seasonal. You would go onto that server and have certain challenges and things that you would do, very much akin to what No Man's Sky has been doing with their expeditions, where you go, and what they would do on these seasonal servers is earn rates, XP, and leveling would be like significantly heightened. You would level up significantly faster, because this is a seasonal character that you would eventually transfer to either a traditional server, or you would hand off any of the cool rewards you got. Maybe there's really cool cosmetics you can get. Like you could get a cape and a jetpack in No Man's Sky Expedition, and then either convert that into a normal save or hand off the cool cosmetics to your main save, your main character. And so I love that. I hope that that's the beginnings of that idea, because I think there's a sweet spot for New World, and I don't think it's hardcore PvP territory control. I'm telling you, my gut instinct about this game is you gotta land it in that mid lane let people come and play it and just play casually, fly casual. So
I would say that there's a value in that, and I don't want them to abandon those features, but those aren't the selling point. Like that should be an option for people to jump in. And the thing I keep asking myself, and I'd love to see this actually across MMOs, is that I would love to see them dedicate, like if they're going to do a fresh start server, what would be the difficulty of them making a PvP flagged server? Like everybody's always flagged all the time as a server, as a way of put up or shut up, as a way of, listen, there's a lot of talk that people say, but then do they really actually follow through? And that would be a really good data point for me to point to, is saying like, listen, y'all kept saying that you wanted just PvP, a PvP server. They made it. There's 3 people on there. Like clearly the talk does not match to the action. Or y'all made a dedicated PvP server and it's got, the biggest queue in the history of the game just to try and get on it. Oh, clearly, let's go ahead and make that, a permanent setting. So along with Fresh Start, my hope is that we could see them kind of create a special custom rules just to test out people's actual action, as opposed to like a lot of people talk, but are they actually willing to put in, and show up, for that as well.
That's exactly right. The nature of PvP to me is always funny. This just, it so much reminds me of the Sea of Thieves debate a little bit, because, and I've conceded some aspects of that debate, but I also think it's funny how if you tell people, hey, we're going to give you this great environment where you can go and it'll only be PvP, there's always this hesitancy or this, I don't know if I would like that as much, right? I kind of like being in a server where there's some non-PvP folks running around and I can control the map and my community can kind of have a run for the server. And if I was in a server and everybody was PvP minded and the territory control was very much an ongoing tug of war, I don't think I'd like that very much. I kind of like beating up on the server. So I'd be interested to see if they did decide to go for, hey, we've got some PvP only servers now. We've got some PvE only servers now, what that would lead to. I happen to think that the PvE servers would be more popular, personally.
Oh, always. That's the thing that I always see people make, like PvP. We want this. This is going to bring back. It's going to save MMOs, and it's like, you're a very vocal minority. Now, I actually am with you. Like, I like PvP. I would play on a PvP server if it was always flagged. I would find that interesting. But it would also be nice, and that's one of the reasons why, like, when I play currently, when I'm playing solo, I'm flagged all the time because I find that interesting and I like what it does. But when I'm playing with others, they don't want that experience, so it's easy. It's nice to turn that off. And so I'd probably end up running 2 different characters. What really is going to be interesting is we have a couple tests in the space that are being built, and there's a lot of hope for Ashes of Creation and the Riot's MMO, in which that Ashes is trying to develop a always flag PvP, but having a negative consequence, a negative incentive to just go up and start fighting people. And then within Riot, them saying, listen, if you want to play a single player game, go play a single player game. We're making a multiplayer MMO. And that starts to kind of signal that forced multiplayer, which a lot of people like who have come into MMOs tend to shy away from as well. Like, oh, I don't want to be forced to play with anybody. I just want to be able to kind of jump in. And that's going to be a really interesting test of the genre and what it means to be that, whether that is sustainable or if that ends up proving out that turns out in order to maintain an MMO, you need that casual. You really need that mid-core player. And they have their own requirements if you want to try and capture the market so that you're financially viable. I think I hear a lot of arguments of the MMOs went like there's not enough volume of players that want that and are willing to pay for that, even though they're very vocal. And so that's why I'm like, yeah, but you don't have. I don't think you have to make a game, a full game that is just that. So what I fully expect to happen at some point is that if Ashes launches and it's successful, and then all of a sudden they start seeing huge population losses because people are like, yeah, there's just a group of people running around killing everybody, and I'm not finding joy in this. If they say, hey, here's a dedicated PvE server that you can play on, and if that's the case that they do that, I think that it continues to show evidence that it's like, yeah, you catch more flies with honey. Like let's just like let's not we know these things. We've seen these things proven out time and time again. But yeah, we'll ultimately have to wait and see what the details of the fresh starts are, because we don't know. Like they just the devs have signaled. They said we like fresh start servers too. We're going to share information with you guys in a couple weeks. What's in a couple of weeks? The 1-year anniversary of this game. I'm betting we're going to see some kind of master or plan or something, some kind of thing that you'll probably get me gushing about here in 2 weeks on the roundtable. Oh my god, they did it! Or
this is not meant to sound like a victory lap, but there's an overarching point here, because when the game first came out, I said one of the primary problems is there's no reason to run the beginning dungeons because you outlevel them. They changed that. They fixed that. Another problem I highlighted on the dungeon. Second problem was the grind to get the currency, to get the key to go into the dungeon is ridiculously arduous. They removed that. Dungeons need a group finder. They addressed that. I said that territory control is going to be a huge stigma and drive people away from the game, especially if they're PvE minded. Well, now if you're PvE, you don't even see territory control. My batting average is pretty good with this game so far, and I'm telling you, it seems all those things, and now fresh start servers, it's like at some point those 5 things start to feel like a trajectory of the audience is telling you what they want, and it's unforeseen when you're originally designing the game. We have to remember this game was going to be like Ashes, always PvP all the time. You want to venture out and hit some rocks and chop some trees down, somebody might bludgeon you, okay? That is not the game that I feel like it's turning into. It just is. It doesn't feel like it's that game. And I think sometimes it's okay to say we didn't anticipate this being what people wanted to do. My gosh, do you think Destiny anticipated a large portion of its player base living in the public space and running patrols? Like, I don't think that they thought people were going to do that. They built strikes, they built nightfalls, they built raids, and a large portion of their player base is doing this in the public space. Like, and I think something that Destiny has masterfully done is they've created rings of stuff to do. So the people running raids, trials, whatever, they don't feel like this down here interferes with them, and vice versa. The people down here don't feel like that up there interferes with them. They're almost separate circles, or they're almost like separate floors in a building. And you're like, I don't know what the guys on the 7th floor are doing. Who cares? I'm down here having a good time. So if you could design New World to be like that, which is where I think PvE, PvP servers, seasonal servers, fresh start servers, you're offering a whole lot of floors to the building to let people enjoy the way they enjoy it. And I don't think that's anybody asking the game to be something that it's not. I think it's just the natural, organic. People combed over the game, and these affinities and habits were born out of that. And if you feed that, it'll foster and grow. And I think this game could have a huge moment. I'm telling you, my continued feeling and gut instinct is I have, like I said, a decent batting average on this game, is they've really got to lean into the PvE and those expeditions, because that's where the gold is. And if they could capstone that with seasonal grind and seasonal battle passes and all that cool stuff and that fresh feeling of a new character, man, Diablo did it, No Man's Sky did it. This game's just prime for it, in my opinion.
For a fresh start server, because obviously you bring up the question of seasonal, like for that server to kind of live on, like is that something that gets shut down and then you just kind of inherit some cool stuff from it, or at some point do you allow transfers on so that just becomes a natural functional world within the game? Say you put investment and then you don't want to let go of that. What would you say would be the net, like a good time frame for a fresh start server to allow transfers on, to basically kind of remove the uniqueness of what we assume a fresh start server is, no transfers onto the server? So what would you say would be a natural time frame for that to kind of take over? Because my also concern in the next question to follow up, I'll let you lead into, is the impact of streamers and streamer culture warring over a fresh start server with their giant communities. And does that have an impact on just the regular mid-core player who's like, I just want to be a part of this, and all of a sudden we clearly lost this server completely because Shroud decided to return and dominate, one faction over here. What do you think?
Well, yeah, let me go backwards through that. Let me go backwards through that. The streamer culture problem is one where collaboration and cooperation would probably be needed. Like, hey, if you're going to come back, streamers, reach out to us, and at certain channel thresholds and certain sizes, we'll consider designating servers for you in your community so everybody else knows to stay away from there. You know, like, make it crystal clear this is where Asmongold is going, and his community can land rush it and first come first serve, and guys like you know that that's not where to go, right? So I think that's probably an easier thing to solve than many people might think. It's like, just literally work with the streamer, say, hey, fill out this form at certain channel size thresholds. We will entertain the idea of designating a server for you so that you can say weeks in advance, this is our server, boys, get in if you can. And everybody else is like, stay away from that friggin' server, right? Now, to everything else that you said, that's why this feels like the seedbed of seasonal characters and seasonal content, because I envision a fresh start server being boot up, get in here. There's no territory control. It's not about that. Okay, no PvP, no warring, none of that. It's about that feeling of leveling, questing, clearing the map, doing all those things, going in all the different areas, grabbing all the stuff, and you'd have everything moving at a faster clip. You'd be leveling up faster. All of your earn rates, farm rates, everything would be faster, and it would be a 3-month thing. You'd have 3 months to get all the stuff, check all the boxes, do all the things, and then after 3 months, they would give you the option. Would you like to migrate this character to a normal server, or would you like to basically retire the character but inherit all of the cosmetic unlocks that you got for your main character? Because let's say you have a main character on a server, you're heavily invested, you got everything going, and you're like, well, I want that awesome cape and crown and transmog stuff that I earned, but that character's kind of throwaway to me. I just enjoyed grinding out that season. It was so much fun. Guess what? It's time for a new character, new season, new fresh start. Now you got another 3 months. So they would automatically reset the server, and your character would just be sitting there on the main menu of like, what do you want to do with this character? I'm telling you, that's the winning ticket for a game like this, because it combines the two worlds so beautifully. Just No Man's Sky and Diablo, I think No Man's Sky, maybe more than Diablo, has really mastered that format. I feel like New World is begging for that to be a thing. And that doesn't need to take away from the people that are like, you know, I want to be on a PvP server. I want to be fighting and warring and territory control. Cool, man. Do it.
Exactly.
I'm going to be over here. I'm going to be over here. I got to tell you, I would probably play what I'm describing. I would probably do that. You know,
it can be a lot of fun. I think as long as they communicate that obviously beforehand, because the worst case scenario is you start on a fresh start server and then in 3 months you're like, wait, what's happening? I took a week off and I came back and all of a sudden things changed and, you know, things like that. But as long as that was essentially communicated, that actually kind of also somewhat solves the problem as these MMOs continue to progress, that you end up establishing kind of that seasonal game mode. And I don't know if that has to be like 3 months and then a brand new thing starts up, or if it ends up being like, listen, every year during September, October, November, like this is some kind of thing that you can choose to optionally participate in, and it has cool rewards. It has all these unique things that you can choose to do, and here are the rules of that. And I think that could be that honestly very tempting, because you know, there's definitely that idea that everybody's kind of starting fresh, that if you're coming in as a new player, you can have this experience and you're not sitting here competing against guys like me who maybe never have taken time off and have endless wealth and endless resources to kind of just do whatever they want, whether that's for good or for bad. And that's one of the problems that persistent online games tend to face after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you know, where a lot of people feel intimidated about stepping into the first time because they're automatically at a natural disadvantage.
It solves two humongous problems, too, if you're doing this every 3 months, like on a seasonal interval. It solves the problem of the returning player and the new player feeling like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. It's really easy. start a seasonal character. It'll walk you through everything that's been updated and changed. Guess what? You sort of get a walking tour of the game. Here's every quality of life update we've added since you last played. Or, oh, hey, you're new? No problem. This is how the game works. You're going to go through every single thing that we've updated. You're getting to enjoy the best version of New World. And it's a little expedited, so you feel like you're kind of catching up. Once the season's over, guess what? You have a shiny, new, decked-out character ready for endgame. Like, that to me is a new and returning player acquisition funnel that does so much for you. You don't have to go in and handhold. That funnel just does it. It takes care of it in an organic way, not sort of a mechanical, clinical way of like, welcome back. He has 85 screens that you have to read, and you're like, what the frick? I don't know what any of this is. I'm telling you, there's something sweet there, because every time I come back to No Man's Sky for a new expedition and I jump in and I start checking the boxes, and every time I check a box on the expedition, I'm getting a bunch of currency and a bunch of rewards, and I feel like I love this. Like I'm powering up as a character once again to trudge out into the universe. I'm feeling that itch. I'm like, man, if New World did that, buddy, I'd be there. I'd be grinding it out. I'd grind out a seasonal character.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'll keep you obviously up to date, because right now we're seeing a lot of positive growth. I with all things that go up, there's going to be some point where they dip back down, and that in and of itself is also tying into gaming and MMO culture, where the majority of players are seasonal players. And then you end up having kind of a smaller, more dedicated group that just lives in the one game forever, for however long in that regard. So it's going to be great to see. I'm personally very excited just from an analytic and number perspective, namely because obviously over the last year, dead game, meme always kind of coming out. And it's like, no, like the only time that this game's in trouble is that if Amazon and the devs decide that they don't want to put more resources and time into it. But right now it's showing that they're clearly continuing and excited to invest money and make more content and improve not just the level 60 experience, but the level 1 experience, the level 2 experience, and all the way through, really listening to feedback, which honestly, if nothing else, whatever other MMO that they're working on, because we know that they're working on building out another MMO RPG, and they've been working on that, like the lessons they can learn from New World, its launch, its year 2, all of a sudden you could be looking at a company just ready to kind of really step into its next chapter, like, firing on all cylinders.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot this week from Tokyo Game Show with people trying to get their trailers out, their announcements out, and Square Enix showed up, and they've got a lot of things going on. And the most exciting part for me was when they showed Forspoken in Japanese. And suddenly I was like, this looks like an amazing, awesome game. I felt like I was watching some epic anime, because I didn't have subpar writing and voice acting getting in the way. It's like, oh, there's a good game here, And a lot of people remarked and said that the Japanese trailer got them excited for Forspoken. I think I might actually play Forspoken with Japanese voice actors and subtitles, because I think I'll enjoy the game significantly more, which that might be a bummer if a bunch of people do that for whoever they hired to be the voice actor for the main character. But it was just interesting. And so, give me your thoughts on that, and then give me everything else that you wanted to talk about with Square Enix as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So Forspoken also was strategically delayed outside of the God of War phase. So that's one of the games that I think actually could benefit Forspoken as well, as when that decides to launch. It looks like a beautiful game, especially since they delivered it. This is the Luminous team, the team behind Final Fantasy 15 as well. So hoping to see them, kind of be able to flex on some of the lessons and technology that they have available for them. Now, at its core, though, like, it isn't Forspoken that has essentially got me the most excited about what Square Enix is delivering. That's kind of their modern take. When we look at 16, which is set up for summer of next year, I think that also has a lot of me really excited for the next iteration into the numbered Final Fantasy series. But there's still complaints of people say, like, they really wish that Final Fantasy would go back to maybe a turn-based roots. And I just don't see that happening. They could always do that. They did that kind of semi with 9. after going, from 7 and 8, having more of a modern take, stepping back more into kind of a fantasy-based feel with the 4-person party. That happened back in the PlayStation era. It really hasn't happened since. It keeps stepping up. And so then that's what we also see them announcing here at TGS at the Square Enix event. Octopath Traveler 2 announced. It has me excited because there's a couple weaknesses I felt Octopath Traveler had. I enjoyed my overall experience. The 2D HD technology, which we've seen them bring Alive remaster to, I really hope it sees them go through like all of their classic NES and SNES games and give it that 2D HD look and feel. But we're seeing that they're continuing on. The cool thing about Octopath Traveler 2 and the weird thing about it, first and foremost, Octopath Traveler originally launched on Switch and then trickled out to other platforms, eventually being everywhere, including Xbox on Game Pass. Octopath Traveler 2 launching on Switch, PlayStation 4, 5, and Steam. No Xbox, no Stadia. So there are definitely some limitations to the platforms that they're launching. But the nice thing is it's launching on Steam. So that means it's an instant purchase on Steam because I will play that on Steam Deck over my Switch any day of the week. Then you also see coming out of it, not just necessarily with Square, but we're seeing also older remakes, Suikoden 1 and 2 coming out of TGS. Like, as a JRPG nerd, as somebody who grew up like within that kind of space, and the fact that I can play these on Steam has me thrilled. Project Triangle Strategy, or we can drop Project now, launched on Switch, now is also coming out to Steam. I think that's an important title, and my hope is that, especially with Octopath Traveler, is that we start to see them in these 2D HD games be multi-platform. But the question off to you is the lack of an Xbox port, especially when it's going everywhere else, especially because they announced Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core is also coming to Xbox. Like, I don't get where the hell Square Enix is. Are they completely done with Xbox? Like, what kind of contractual deal is going on with Sony and keeping games off of Xbox or letting certain games on Xbox? I literally cannot figure out what the play is. Are they going to get married? Or, is this some kind of like, key situation, like you'd go to a key party like in the 70s where it's like, okay, like tonight, all right, but not tomorrow. Like, it's really weird. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, I don't ever really understand quite what's going on with the selective, this is exclusive, this is not. Sony and Square, they obviously have a history. Square closed and shuttered a lot of the Western studios. We thought, they're shrinking. Sony's going to scoop them up. They'll scoop up the Japan division. And they seem to be potentially working, to protect themselves maybe as well. Like, we don't want you to get bought out, or, we don't want you to play nice with Xbox, because obviously Final Fantasy got brought up in the big Call of Duty exclusive debate. People are like, well, Sony's being hypocritical because, they won't let Final Fantasy come over here. And I was like, well, no, they're not being hypocritical, because Sony isn't taking an issue with exclusivity, because both sides have done this. They buy up a game, they scoop up a game, they limit it to one platform. Xbox did it with Tomb Raider. Xbox notoriously did this with Call of Duty for years before Sony locked them down. And I don't know if this is going to change anytime soon, because it does seem like we're entering into a new era that many have dubbed this. We're not going to really be in a console war anymore. It's a content war. We're buying up studios. We're buying up content because we want this content to be controlled by us. Now, that doesn't mean that the content will always be locked down to one platform, because Sony has all but said, they said in an interview that all future Bungie titles will be multi-platform after that acquisition. Yeah. They've all but said it, that all of their live service games will be multi-platform, because Sony got Bungie to help them with the live service push, and they likely started looking at Destiny's numbers and said, multi-platform is the way forward for this. You can't really do live service and restrict it to a certain platform. So with games like Final Fantasy that have that history, and they more than likely have a pretty strong Asian market pull, I could see Sony doing this purely as we want this for our platform, we want this for our customers. I could also see them saying, what do we care? Like, it's not going to sell well anyway on the Xbox in that market. I don't really have an opinion on companies doing exclusives. Like, if they want to buy a company, buy a game, or pay a game for timed exclusivity, that's whatever. I actually, I don't have a strong opinion on it, but I hope that they would move away from this to a certain extent. I don't care if you buy Insomniac, Guerrilla, or Santa Monica and then say, we want great first-party titles. I think that's totally legitimate and fine. That's you investing in your platform. But going to a company and saying, hey, that's a great game you made there. We would like it only on ours. Or we would like some quests and some different items to only be available on ours, like they're doing with Hogwarts. I'm like, what is this? Like, what? I don't...
Especially when they do that with Call of Duty, like, hands down. But my thing, especially with Square Enix, is like, they're obviously paying for that. Like, they are paying because essentially when you look at it from a business perspective, you're like, all right, I'm projected to make $3 million by putting this on Xbox or whatever the number is. Well, then, yeah, Sony's like, well, okay, yeah, we can pay for that. So we incentivize. But I don't know what that ultimate cost is because they're clearly bringing it to Steam, which essentially is like they're, like it's not exclusive. Like, when people talk about how Xbox has exclusives, it's like, no. They've actually gotten away from that because you can play on PC. Like, you're not restricted to a, buying a console, which is what you were in the past. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's actually a good thing, but I don't define that ever as exclusive. I never will, because that's not what that means to me. But they're trying, the narrative's trying to change. But what then at some point, like, how much is that costing Sony to the point where like I see Creature saying, like, it feels like Square Enix and Sony are ring shopping. Like, this is some kind of just defense mechanism against like Microsoft trying to buy them perhaps, or does this not just frustrate Microsoft to the point where that number gets so high that the shareholders just have to say, all right, you win, we're going to go ahead and just do this? Or, are we going to finally hear some news? Because if Sony came out tomorrow and said, hey, we're buying Square Enix, cool, and we're going to bring their games to places, cool. Like, I think that increases their content offering, like content being king. I think that increases their content offering. If they said, hey, we're buying Square Enix and the only place that you can play their games is on PlayStation, I think everybody loses. in that case. So I'm kind of in some way kind of like just saying, like, with these weird deals, like, just buy them, but still then say, yeah, we're going to put it everywhere, just not on Xbox. And then Xbox buys stuff and then we're like, hey, we're going to put it everywhere, just not on PlayStation. And then at some point that gets fixed. Like, I just, that's my hope, is that in terms of like negotiating power between the two companies, they say, hey, listen, we'll let you have Final Fantasy if you let us have Call of Duty. And then it's, everybody wins. Everybody wins. But that way you don't end up having one company with just too much power in the gaming space.
Maybe this is too simplistic. Maybe I'm thinking too narrowly here, but I don't know why they don't just say, hey, we're going to buy this company. This is now our property, and we're going to ensure that our platform is the best place to play it. We'll have extra awesome goodies at the start. We'll give our platform 48 hours of early access. We'll give our platform, a beta. And then be like, yeah, sure, you can buy it on Xbox. Yeah, that's no problem. Sure, we'll make money on your platform, but you will not be the premier place to play the game. And I have a feeling that's what Microsoft is going to do with Call of Duty. They're going to say, listen, let's say Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 is a thing. Let's just say it's a thing. And it's going to launch in 2024. And the acquisition's gone through. I could see Microsoft saying, play Modern Warfare 3 on Game Pass day and date. And there's going to be all these, like, spiffs for the people who have Game Pass. There'll be a skin, there'll be an unlock, there'll be this, and there'll be that. And then they'll let everybody on PlayStation buy the game at full price. So they're doing both. They're making their platform look like the better place to play and experience Call of Duty while making billions off of another platform where it's the proof is in the pudding. 48% of Call of Duty's sales come from PlayStation. So I don't know why more companies don't follow that model. I'm not saying do that with God of War and Spider-Man and Halo. Like, I do think there are some identity iconic driving characters and franchises that you just sort of leave alone. But I also think they scooped up Bungie, and they're like, yeah, all the Bungie stuff's going to be multi-platform, and we're going to make the money from that. Same with their live service games. Same with Final Fantasy. There might be something more underneath the surface. There does seem to be something going on with some of the Japanese-owned companies. It seemed like there were some things maybe happening with From Software. It also seemed that, Tencent was trying to protect Ubi from getting bought out. They went up to 49%, of controlling shared interest, and maybe that was them trying to help Ubi not get bought or something. There's definitely some seeming, it seems like preliminary preparations are happening for something bigger, and it's possible everyone's holding their breath for the Microsoft Activision Blizzard deal. They want that to close maybe before everything else happens, because I think that's a big breath hold right now. Everyone's like, what's going to happen with that? The CMA, the UK regulators, are going to phase 2. They're really wanting to investigate it. They want assurances about Call of Duty. So maybe there's some acquisitions and some buyouts that are on pause right now because they want that thing to go through first.
Oh yeah. You don't want to sit here and interrupt this massive land deal, because but Phil Spencer's also signaled that there's more acquisitions that he wants to make. And that's the danger of Game Pass from his perspective, is that he's created a monolith of a system that's hungry for content, right? And so in order to drive the value, you have to have and feed the machine. And so there's definitely, I think, when you look at their offerings, there's definitely more, things that could provide content for them that would be of value. And that could be within gaming, or that could be within, if, rumors of them buying Netflix or something of that nature, to where all of a sudden it's like, here's your one-stop entertainment shop, kind of package. But yeah, we'll have to ultimately wait and see. With there's so many acquisitions going on, sometimes it's even hard to keep up. Just as we were talking in the last segment about New World, like running around the PTR and Brimstone Sands, like there was some very Stargate style, structures in the game. And then I was kind of laughing about it because I was like, hey, who owns Stargate? Oh, it turns out actually Amazon owns Stargate. Like they bought them with the MGM acquisition. And I was like, what a twist this would be. Like in all these acquisitions, that they start integrating some of their own other properties into this whole ecosystem. And so just like with Square, yeah, I think it is in a way kind of like a defense against self-destruction. It's like, okay, cool. Like as long as nobody has like all the power and influence, then we can negotiate within ourselves and whatever our platforms are. And ultimately, competition is going to be something that helps us as gamers win out in the end. More player choice, more player freedom. I think the next battle for players outside of like Square, like in the this topic of Square Enix, is being able to take your game saves to other platforms. Like if your save can go with you on another platform, I think that's the next battle, because we've been fighting for cross-play, cross-save. Once that's all like said and done, the next thing is to be able to say, yeah, your save goes with you. Like if you're tired of playing in whatever ecosystem, because they're doing they're pulling shenanigans, raising the price on you and stuff like that, and you want to like go elsewhere, then as long as your saves can carry with you, then I think that would be another gamer first initiative, personally speaking.
Call of Duty's doing that with there's going to be a new social. Right. There's going to be a new social integration so that battle pass progression and progression of your character will be cross-platform. Woo-hoo! Now they might have meant between console and mobile, but it did seem
it's got to be account-based. Like that we're seeing, and when I say cross-play, cross-save, that's the fight that we're kind of wrapping up, and we're seeing more integration, which is a win. What I'm talking about is like, imagine in your single-player game, like you take your save and move it over to like a completely other platform that isn't fresh. Now that could be cloud-based. That could be, Multiverses is absolutely cross-play, cross-save. So it's rooted in that, but it's obviously not within everything. Like if I play Sonic on Xbox and then I go to Switch, I don't have any progress that carries over. And that would be what I would consider the next kind of goal for gamers to really kind of give us that level of freedom. But some games are doing it. And the idea is that the more that happens, the more that players come to expect that. Then when a game doesn't do it, it actually then is like you get that immediate feedback.
Yeah, somebody in chat saying cross-buy would be even better. I mean, that's a pipe dream.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's a bit of a
honestly,
pipe
actually, I would actually fight against cross-buy because essentially, like, I have no problem buying a game multiple places and playing it in multiple places. So if they said I needed to buy this game here and here in order to play it, but then all of my stuff is always there, I absolutely feel like that's fine because I'm supporting both the platform and the developer and that concept. So I would be fully on board for cross buy, because essentially that is still player choice, but it's also player funding of that offering, so to speak. I would also be fine if they decided to bundle a cross buy, saying, hey, pay $120 and guess what? Here's the keys for every platform we're on. Like I would be fine if they wanted to bundle that as a sale, but I believe that platforms should get their cut. I believe a platform should not necessarily just like, oh, you bought it on Xbox, here's it on PlayStation. I don't think that is actually fair in the long run because of the development time importing a game.
Yeah, and that just furthers this notion of, spending money on games is becoming almost, I don't know, it's like people are allergic to spending money on games in some situations. We kind of debated this the other day, and I said I felt like there was this very odd, is it on Game Pass phenomenon happening where people, and I found myself doing this. Someone would say, oh, there's a new game out, you should check it out, you should play it or whatever, and the first thing I said was, oh, is it on Game Pass? Almost like, can I go get it there for free first? And if that's happening to me as someone who owns every system, and generally I'm fine with buying a game and then covering it and making content with it, and if that's still happening in my brain, imagine what's happening in the hive mind at large when something comes out. I see people say it in my chat, oh, I'll wait for it to hit Game Pass. Is it on Game Pass? And that's spreading this idea of like this allergy to buying games. And people are like, why do I spend money on a game? Or this idea is, why do I have to buy the game again? It's like, what do you mean you bought it at a different store, a different storefront, a different platform? So that would be pretty destructive to allow cross-buy. I think cross-play, cross-progression makes sense because it's all server-side. As long, I'm buying the game again. What difference does it make if I'm, cloud saving and coming into the game? As long as I, paid for it again. I don't see the issue there.
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
I think ultimately that content war is going to continue to met out and not do things it's going to do things that we don't like. I don't like what they're doing with Hogwarts, even though I'm going to buy it on PS5 and probably enjoy the heck out of the game. I'm like, man, oh man, this feels like a step backwards. This feels like something from a bygone era, of buying up potions and quests and saying, oh, they're only on our platform. I'm just not down with that. I don't think that's a good way to treat the art. And I think timed exclusives feel similarly, unpleasant. It's like you make people wait a year to get the game.
It was a bad game, but it was also a timed exclusive, and Square Enix is shutting down Babylon's Fall. It was exclusive to PlayStation, and it's never coming to Xbox because they shutting that thing down. It's unfortunate because even if it was a good game and it just couldn't find adoption, like that does show you that in a multiplayer world, like why are you cutting yourself off of the knees? And so my hope is that is in part lessened. It's unfortunate because obviously the game was not well received. It definitely was not a game that you would want to highlight as the sacrificial lamb on the altar for that. But when I look at this absolute aspect, I was like, well, that's I really hope people look at this timed exclusive multiplayer game as a real bad idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Zubair says it's a separate category. Movies are see it in the theater, rent or skip. Game Pass is the new rent category. I'm not buying this, but if I have a low barrier of entry, I'll try it. The only problem I think that there is with that analogy, there's a qualitative difference between when you rent the movie and see it in the theater. You don't get the size of the screen, you don't get the live audience, you don't get the sound and the rumble, right? And so there's a qualitative difference there. So that you're getting a different version of the movie. To a certain degree, it's the same movie and all the same things happen, but you're getting a slightly diminished version and slightly diminished experience. Now, depending on the theater, and depending on your home, it might not be that diminished, because people have amazing, home theater experiences now, and going to the theater sometimes feels like a step down because the floor is sticky and there's a kid crying. But I do think that Game Pass is becoming that I don't want to buy games. Why would I buy games? That mentality, I think, is spreading, and I still have concerns about what that'll do long term to the market as that mentality spreads. Not that we can't have diminishing value, like, oh, the game's been out for a year, so now it's on sale, or now you can get it bundled. You can buy this game with all of its DLC at a discounted cost. I definitely think there's a diminishing sort of a depreciation of value over time of anything like that, but Game Pass just continues to worry me with, I use it and I enjoy it, but I even notice it's doing something to me as a consumer passively, where that low entry point of just install it and try it out, and I love doing that on my Sony, but I'm paying for that, and it's a trial, to where if the game hooks me, now I have to buy it. I just feel like that offers the same value, but it protects consumer and developer in a more healthy way. Obviously,
I agree.
That's just my opinion, but when you compare the two, I have way more concerns about one over the other. Now, we've been, this week and last week, we've been taking people over to our reaction channel, which I know you wanted to discuss that with me.
No, I loved it. It was great.
Yeah. What's your when do you need to be done? Do you need to be done at 4?
My wife is like literally texting and calling. So like if we can have a quick discussion around it, or we could save that for another day. It really up to you. So it's like it would benefit me probably if I can go and help her as she's been preparing.
I anticipated that. Because I felt like each week you were kind of like muting the mic and like staring at the door, worried it was going to get beat down.
She was crawling down behind here because she didn't want to be on camera because she needed to get something from out of the shelf. And I was like, I'm about to talk. Like,
yeah.
So sometimes it throws me for a loop.
I foresaw that. I had like a prophetic vision, and I thought, you know what? We'll end this show, and we're actually going to go. You guys are going to want to see this. This is a Cyberpunk video. This guy wrote like a love letter to Cyberpunk. It's probably one of the most touching videos I think I've ever seen. I really enjoyed it, and he doesn't change my mind about Cyberpunk. But it's kind of a beautiful video, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm going to take everybody over there with a redirect, and then we'll come back here for members only. So we're going to let Ginger go, so that he can take care of everything he's got going on. This is always we appreciate him being on the show because it's always a bit of a tight window for him. He's got, sometimes the kids are beating the door down. So before we do that, though, Ginger, let everybody know the best place they can find your content.
The best place is over on YouTube. Ginger Prime's the main channel, and I've discovered that it's a lot more fun for me to talk about individual games, especially games as a service games like Final Fantasy and New World and like Blue Protocol, when breaking them out into their own specific channel. So if you start on Ginger Prime, you'll be able to really kind of find everything that you want. And in fact, one of the things that Lono and I need to probably talk about maybe next week is a special bonus after show is the changes that YouTube is finally looking to make in terms of how live stream content, short content, all that's going to be handled. So personally speaking, I think that's going to benefit us greatly in how we actually manage kind of our content and our content schedule. But that's the best place to start. Friday nights, I stream over on the Purple platform. Whether you want to support that or not, you can always come hang out. But the best place from there is just if you want to get more connected, jump into the Discord and join in the conversations that are going on when videos aren't going up. But that's where I would point you to as the best place to start. You can always follow me over on Twitter and all the social platforms, yada, yada, yada. But I just appreciate being a part of the show and getting to hang out with you guys on Fridays and talk games, because it's great because there's so many other parts. Like I want to talk about shooters, but nobody cares about my opinion about shooters on Prime. They're like, talk about MMOs, talk about RPGs.
Right. Well, if everybody in the audience holds tight, we're going to redirect over to this reaction video of mine to Cyberpunk. We'll come back here for members only. Don't forget that it is Friday, And we hit a big member goal this week, so my wife and I are going to be playing a game tonight that she does not want to play. And you're not going to want to miss that if you're a member. So if redirect is traditionally not very good for you, you can use the link in chat. But when this stream ends, it's going to carry you guys over there, and then I will instantly publish. I'll instantly publish that video and let you guys enjoy that. So I'll see you over there, and I'll see you back here for members only. Thanks for watching or listening to another episode of the Reforge Roundtable. We'll see you next week.